After Abimelech, there arose to save Israel Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, from the tribe of Issachar. He lived in Shamir, in the hills of Ephraim. He judged Israel 23 years, and when he died, was buried in Shamar. After that arose Yair from Gilead. He judged Israel 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode on 30 young donkeys. They owned 30 circles, which are called Havot Yair to this day. They are in a territory of Gilead. When Yair died, he was buried in Kaman. Again, the people of Israel did what was evil from Adonai's perspective. They served Baalam and Ashtaroth, the god of Aram, the gods of Zidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the people of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistine. They abandoned Adonai and did not serve him. So the anger of Adonai blazed against Israel, and he handed them over to the Philistine, the people of Ammon. For 18 years, starting that day, they oppressed and persecuted all the people of Israel who lived beyond the Jordan, in the territory of Emrim, in Gilead. The people of Ammon also crossed the Jordan to fight Yehuda, Benjamin, the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was greatly distressed. Then the people of Israel cried to Adonai, "We have sinned against you by forsaking our God and serving Baalam." Adonai said to the people of Israel, "I saved you from the Egyptians, the Emrim, the people of Ammon, and the Plishtim, didn't I? Likewise, when the people of Zidon, Abimelech, Maon oppressed you, you cried out to me, and I rescued you from their power. Yet you abandoned me and served other gods. Therefore I will not rescue anymore. Go and cry to the gods you choose. Let them rescue you when you're in trouble." The people of Israel said to Adonai, "We have sinned. Treat us whatever way seems good to you, but save us today, please." They got rid of their foreign gods, served Adonai, and he became troubled by Israel's misery. Then the people of Ammon gathered together and set up camp in Gilead, where the people of Israel assembled and camped in Mitzpah. The chiefs of Gilead, said to each other, "Whoever leads the battle against the army of Ammon will be head over everyone living in Gilead." Now, Yiftach, the brave soldier of Gilead, was the son of a prostitute. His father, Gilead, had other sons by his wife, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Yiftach away from him. "Will you not inherit from our father because you are another woman's son?" Then Yiftach fled from his brothers and lived in the territory of Tov, where he enlisted a gang of rowdies who would go out raiding with him. After a while, the people of Ammon made war against Israel. When the army of Ammon attacked Israel, the leaders of Gilead went to fetch Yiftach from the territory of Tov and said to the leaders of Gilead, "Don't you hate me so much that you forced me out of my father's house? Why are you coming to me now when you're in trouble?" The leaders of Gilead replied, "Here is why we've come back to you now. If you lead us in war with the people of Ammon, you will be head over everyone living in Gilead." Yiftach answered them, "If you bring me back home to fight the army of Ammon and Adonai defeats them for me, I will be your head." Leaders of Gilead said to Yiftach, "Adonai has witnessed that we promised to do what you have said." Then Yiftach went with the leaders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over them. Yiftach repeated all these conditions at Mitzpah, at the presence of Adonai. Yiftach sent out messengers to the king of the people of Ammon to say, "What's your problem with us? Why are you invading our territory?" The king of Ammon answered the messengers of Yiftach, "Because Israel took away my territory when they came up from Egypt. They took everything from the Arnon to the Yabach and to the Jordan. Now, restore it peacefully." Yiftach sent messengers again to the king of the people of Ammon with this response: Here is what Yiftach has to say. Israel captured neither the territory of Moab nor the territory of the people of Ammon. But when Israel came up from Egypt, walked through the desert to the Red Sea, and arrived at Kadesh, when Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom to say, "Please let us pass through your land," but the king of Edom wouldn't let them, he sent a similar message to the king of Moab, but neither would he, so Israel stayed at Kadesh. Then they walked through the desert, around the territory of Edom, and the territory of Moab, passed through the east border, the territory of Moab, and pitched camp on the side of the Arnon. But they did not cross the border of the Moab. From the Arnon was the border of Moab. Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of Amori, and the king of Heshbon with this message: "Please let us pass through your land to our own place." But Sihon did not trust that Israel would pass through his land. So he gathered all his people together, pitched camp at Yahatz, and fought against Israel. Adonai, the God of Israel, handed Sihon and his people over to Israel, and they killed them. Thus Israel possessed all the territory of the Emori who lived there. They took possession of all the territory of the Emori, from the Arnon to the Yabok, and from the desert to the Yarden. So now that Adonai, the God of Israel, has expelled the Emori from before the people of Israel, do you think that you will expel us? You should just keep the territory your God Chemosh has given you, while we, for our part, will hold on to whatever Adonai, our God, has given to us, the lands that belong to others before us. Really? Are you better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did you ever pick a quarrel with Israel or fight with us? Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, in Aroer and its villages, and all the cities in the banks of the Arnon for 300 years. Why didn't you take them back during that time? No, I have done you no wrong, but you are doing me wrong to war against me. May Adonai the judge be judge today between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. But the king of the people of Ammon paid no attention to the message Yiftach sent them. Then the spirit of Adonai came to Yiftach, and he passed through Gilgal and Menashiah, through Mizpah and Gilead, and from there over the people of Ammon. Yiftach made a vow to Adonai: "If you will hand the people of Ammon over to me, then whatever comes out the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the people of Ammon will belong to Adonai. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." So Yiftach crossed over to fight the people of Ammon, and Adonai handed them over to him. He killed them for Orori until you reach Minit, 20 cities, all the way to Avel Kimrim. It was a massacre. So the people of Ammon were defeated before the people of Israel. As Yiftach was returning to his house in Mizpah, his daughter came dancing out to meet him with tambourines. She was his only child. He had no other son or daughter. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, "Oh, no! My daughter! You're breaking my heart. Why must you be the cause of such pain for me? I made a vow to Adonai. I can't go back on my word." She said to him, "Father, you made a vow to Adonai, so do whatever you said you would do to me, because Adonai did take vengeance on the enemies of the people of Ammon." Then she said to her father, "Just do this one thing for me. Let me be alone for 2 months. I'll go away into the mountains with my friends and mourn, because I will die without getting married." "You may go," he answered. And he sent her away for 2 months. She left, she and her friends, and mourned in the mountains that she would die unmarried. After 2 months she returned to her father, and he did with her what he had vowed. She had remained a virgin, so it became a law in Israel that the women of Israel would go every year for 4 days to lament the daughter of Yiftach from Gilead. The men of Ephraim assembled and crossed into Zaphon, and said to Yiftach, why didn't you call us to go with you when you went out to fight the people of Ammon? We're ready to burn down your house with you in it. Yiftach answered, my people and I were in a serious dispute with the people of Ammon. I called you, and you didn't rescue me from their power. When I saw that you weren't rescuing me, I put my life in my own hands and went over to attack the people of Ammon. And Adonai gave them over to me into my power. So why have you come up today to fight me? Then Yiftach gathered together all the men of Gilead and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim, because they were saying, you Gilead men who live in Ephraim and Manasseh have deserted Ephraim. The men of Gilead cut off Ephraim from the crossing over the Jordan, and whenever anyone from Ephraim tried to escape and said, let me go across, the men of Gilead would ask him, are you from Ephraim? And if he said no, they would tell him, say, Shibboleth. If he said Shibboleth, because he would not make his mouth pronounce it right, they took hold of him and killed him on the spot at the Jordan crossing. At that time, 42,000 men of Ephraim died. Yiftach judged Israel for 6 years. Then Yiftach from Gilead died, and he was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. After him, Ibzan of Beth-lehem judged Israel. He had 30 sons, and he had 30 daughters whom he had sent abroad. He brought 30 women from abroad to marry his sons. He judged Israel for 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried in Beth-lehem. After him, Elon from Zebulun judged Israel. He judged Israel for 10 years. Then Elon from Zebulun died and was buried in Ayalon, at the territory of Zebulun. After him, Abdon, the son of Hillel from Paraton, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons, who rode on 70 young donkeys. He judged Israel for 8 years. Then Abdon, the son of Hillel from Piraton, died and was buried at Piraton in the territory of Ephraim in the Amalek hills.